Hey, slip beneath your blankets and let the room grow silent around you. Outside, imagine a winter moon hanging like a tarnished coin over narrow, slate-tiled roofs. You've only just arrived in this nameless city of crooked timber and frozen gutters, yet you already feel its restless heart beating through the stones. Somewhere far below, a church bell coughs out the 11th hour late, enough for honest folk to dream, early enough for killers to wake. You crouch on a roof ridge slick with frost, gloved fingers trembling not from cold, but from the enormity of what you're about to do. The man beside you, your new mentor, if the word can survive such darkness, signals for silence with a gesture so swift, it's almost tender. His name is lost to every census, but the streets whisper Corvinus, a nod to the black-winged cloak he wears. Tonight, he'll test your resolve the way a blacksmith tests red-hot iron, by striking it hard and listening for song or shatter. Beneath the roofline, candle-pale light spills through cracks in shuttered windows. The sweet smell of peat smoke drifts upward, mingling with sea salt wind and the hidden rot of medieval gutters. Your breath ghosts the air. You try to summon courage, but it's slippery, like iced iron, beautiful to look at, treacherous to touch. Corvinus hands you a stiletto hardly longer than your palm, its grip wrapped in rough leather, its blade blackened with lamp soot to swallow moonlight. Steel is faithful, he murmurs, if you learn its language. Down the roof and through a gaping attic vent you move, muscles aching from the awkward crouch of stealth. Inside, you land on bare beams above a sleeping workshop. The darkness is thick, scented with wood shavings and oxhide glue. On a trestle table below, half-finished vials and lutes lie like silent witnesses, their hollow bodies waiting to be filled with musica tonight, perhaps with screams. The target. A luthier rumoured to craft secret compartments for treasonous letters. Truth or rumour scarcely matters. The guild has a contract, and contracts are scripture. Corvinus watches from the shadows as you edge along a beam, each heartbeat thunderous in your ears. In training, you practiced on dangling sacks of sand, learned to drop softly, to strike swiftly, to cover a mouth before it could bloom into a cry. But sacks of sand don't breathe, don't pray, don't bleed. The luthier sleeps on a straw mattress near the dying hearth, face softened by slumber, limbs folded like marionette strings gone slack. You realise, suddenly and with panic, that his hair is shot with grey hees older than your father would be if plague hadn't taken him. The dagger grows heavy in your grip. Minutes stretch. Somewhere a dog barks, a cartwheel rattles over cobblestones, then silence again. Every mundane sound magnifies your hesitation. The guild's first rule echoes in your head. Doubt is deadlier than any guard. You tighten your jaw, gliding down a ladder so rickety it sighs beneath your weight. Straw whispers underfoot. The luthier's chest rises in slow waves, the gentle rhythm of a man who trusts the night to hold him. Poor fool. You kneel, dagger poised. Your other hand finds his mouth, fingers trembling as they hover inches above lips chapped from workshop fires. Yet something inside rebels. In childhood, you knelt like this, only to whisper bedtime prayers, not to still a beating heart. The memory splits you open, your mother's voice, soft as candle glow, weaving psalms through thatch and nightingales. But here, There is no mother, no Sarmonley, Corvinus's silent silhouette by the ladder, the pressure of his gaze as chilling as the dagger's kiss. Steel meets skin. A quick, practiced insertion below the ear exactly where your tutor drilled the point of no return. The luthier's eyes flare open, wide with confusion that shatters into terror, then dims. Warmth floods your gloved hand. A coppery scent rises, tangling with pine shavings and pitch resin. You expect thunder, remorse, some divine bolt of judgment. Instead, there is only the crackle of the hearth and a final, strangled sigh. The world goes horribly, eerily still. Corvinus approaches, inspecting your work the way a mason inspects mortar lines. He nods once approval or pity, you can't tell. From inside his cloak, he draws a small beeswax tablet, etched with tiny runes. He places it inside a hollow carved beneath the vial table, a cruel inversion of the artistry you've just silenced. Evidence planted, the guild's narrative secured. Contracts are kept, he whispers, and seekers get paid. We are neither judges nor martyrsonly shadows. You want to scream that shadows burn when morning comes, but your tongue is stone. The journey back across rooftops feels endless. Frost crunches underfoot, dawn bruises the horizon wine red, and guilt settles like lead in your lungs. Ahead, Corvinus melts into a chimney's silhouette, a raven disappearing into its own ink. Behind, the luthier's final breath lingers like unsung melody in the silence before birdsong. You realize with dreadful clarity that this was the easy night, the first rung on a ladder that descends, not climbs. And you have 7 dawns left before the week is out. Morning drips into the assassin's quarter like thin, bitter broth. The guild's safe house hides behind an unassuming tannery, its stone walls slick with centuries of lime wash and secrets. Inside, the air is dense with tannin, iron filings, and the waxy perfume of extinguished candlescents that cling to your throat the way last night's blood clings to the crease between thumb and forefinger. Sleep was a phantom that perched just out of reach. Every time your eyelids sagged, you heard the luthier's final rasp echo through the rafters. When the bell of St. Margaret's strikes terse the hour artisans return to their benches, Corvinus leads you down a spiral stair, hardly wider than a coffin's diagonal. If you stay, you must learn how the blade thinks, he murmurs, voice rasping off damp stone. A torch sputters in his fist, painting the walls with bruised orange halos. Your boots slide on steps polished glass, smooth by generations of contrite souls seeking mastery or mercy. Few found both. The stair yawns into a forge the size of a crypt, its ceiling arched like a ribcage. Twin hearths roar with bellows powered by a foot Treadley-owned side, devoted to honest blacksmithing for the city guard, the other to crafts never recorded in guild rolls. Master Hrodgar presides here, a broad man whose beard sparks russet in the firelight. Sparks pop around him like frantic fireflies as he draws a glowing billet from coals. Fresh meat, eh? He grunts, weighing you with eyes the colour of slag. Let's see if you harden or crack. He gestures toward a basin of bone, white water lime steeped in crushed stag antler. Quench, he orders, plunging the billet. Steam billows, carrying a bitter musk. Hrodgar explains that antlers calcium leaches into the steel, leaving a ghost-thin skin that resists rust. A blade that stains tells tales, he says. Ours must pass unnoticed through cloak and liver alike, leaving little proof beyond sorrow. The practicality is obscene and yet elegant. Murder reduced to metallurgy. Your task: hammer raw stock into the blank for a misericord. The slender mercy, blade slipped between ribs to pierce the heart. Every strike reverberates up your arms, through your sternum, rattling the guilt lodged behind breastbone. Sweat mingles with forge grime, trickling into the shallow cut you earned on last night's ladder. Salt stings, memory stings harder. Corvinus corrects your grip thumb angled, wrist locked then steps aside to let failure teach. Hours melt. Iron softens, cools, reheats. Hrodgar croons, smith songs older than the plague, verses of iron slumber and awakening. He tells you bone ash is not the only secret. Blades may be cased in clay and blood to coax a tempered spine with a razor edge. Hard and soft in the same breath like the assassin who must be ice outside, ember within. You think of the luthier's workshop, pine shavings curling like frozen waves, and the ember that flared, however, briefly when doubt almost stayed your hand. At noon, a runner delivers bread, cheese, and watered ale. The respite is silent, save for chewing and the crackle of the forge. Corvinus unwraps oiled linen, revealing tools of the more delicate art's needles, fine as spider legs, vials of cinnabar and verdigris, a tiny glass sphere filled with mercury that glints like liquid moon. Poison is a patient blade, he tells you, but its hilt is heavier than steel. Mistake dosage by a single dram, and it's your pulse that falters. He uncorks a vial. The scent of bitter almonds ghosts the air oil of bitter apricot pit, lethal to lungs in confined spaces. You recork it with trembling fingers. After the meal, Hrodgar sets you at the grindstone. Sparks fan out in golden arcs, lighting the gloom in fits and starts. Each pass hones more than metal, it hones intention. You recall every rule recited during your recruitment. Carry no coin that jingles, never cross the same bridge twice in a flight, trust silence over steel until silence breaks. The grindstone teaches another rule. Once an edge is taken away, it may be restored, but it is never the same edge. Dusk deepens, hearthlight turning the forge a molten cave. Your misericord lies finished on Hrodgar's anvil, a needle, slender blade, spine etched with a discreet chevron mark proof of guild workmanship. Hrodgar tests balance, then slides the blade into a walnut grip, hollowed for a sliver of lead. Weight toward the hand, he explains. So if your strike wedges in bone, the knife still belongs to you. Ownership feels like a curse. He hands it over, but it may as well be a millstone. Back in the dormitory loft, you scrub iron dust from skin as bells toll compline. Night presses against leaded panes, urging confession. Corvinus stands at the door, silhouette rimmed by torchlight. Tomorrow, he says, you'll learn to move through crowds without stirring dust. Tonight, listen to the blade you forged. Steel keeps memory. It remembers if the hand that wields it trembles. He leaves, boots whispering down the corridor. Alone, you wrap the misericord in linen and nestle it beneath your pallet. You swear you can feel its chill through wood and wool, hear it singing faintly an unfinished note that promises either mastery or ruin long before the week is done. Dawn seeps through the tannery shutters, like watered milk, and you rise before the rooster dares. Your new blade sleeps against your ribs, bound with linen beneath your jerkin. Every time you inhale, the misericord presses a reminder into skin. I am here, and so is the promise you made on that frozen rooftop. Corvinus appears wordlessly at your cot, a phantom stitched from shadow and tallow-scented candlelight. With a tilt of his head, he beckons you beyond the stair and into a narrow corridor that smells of damp vellum and crushed lavandera corridor no tradesman ever sees. The passage ends at a low oak door barred with iron. Corvinus produces a key the size of a sparrow's femur and turns it with needle delicacy. Hinges creak like distant gulls. Inside, a chamber catalogued not by shelves, but by coffers, reliquaries, velvet rolls, each labelled in spidery shorthand. The ceiling is so low you must stoop. Your breath brushes cold timbers coated in soot from nights of clandestine lamp work. Corvinus shuts the door, strikes flint, and a single oil lamp blooms into golden, conspiratorial light. Tools, he says simply, are stories waiting to happen. Choose poorly, and the tale will finish you before it begins. He unwraps a bundle of leather pouches. First, throwing blades no larger than table knives, edges blue-honed so thin they whisper when you tilt them. Next, steel caltrops bent like malicious stars for scattering on cobbles in a chase. Then come vials stoppered with wax, the wax stamped by guild signets so that any tampering shouts like a herald's trumpet. One vial holds Cura-Black liquid viscous as nightshade resin. Another contains a powder pink as cherry petal, ground from desiccated shore crab, potent enough to still a heart by merely grazing split skin. You stare, half fascinated, half repulsed. Each object carries its own silent liturgy of pain. Corvinus gestures toward a writing desk, littered with sealing wax, signet rings, and parchment strips far narrower than any court scribe would tolerate. A blade kills a body, he says, but a forged sigil can kill a dynasty. He demonstrates heating crimson wax, pressing a ring, but before the imprint cools, he scores a hair's breadth cut across the seal. A king's messenger sees a perfect crest, he murmurs. Yet tilt it to the right lantern, and the cut glints a secret mark, revealing the letter's true parentage to those who know. Treason's razor hides in wax as keenly as in steel. Now parchment. Fibres beaten thin as liturgical host, riddled with allume, so words vanish in water. You learn to write small, smaller, smallest Latin shorthand, reduced to specks a louse could straddle. Corvinus makes you practice until hand cramps, forearm burning like the forge rod. And still he says, smaller. The guard's torch must skim the scroll and see nothing but dust. Hours pass. Ink dries. Your eyes blur. Eventually, your script resembles the irregular stipple of woodworm in oak illegible to the uninitiated, priceless to co-conspirators waiting 3 duchies away. Mid-morning pupils dilated from lamplight, you're led to the apothecary alcove, heartsick from ink fumes. Shelves thrum with earthen jars, powdered antler, monk's hood bulbs, flecks of orpiment that glow jaundice, yellow. Mistress Isabeau, presidess silver-haired but unbowed, fingers stained a permanent indigo by woad and hemlock. She studies you the way a falcon weighs wind currents. An assassin who understands only iron earns coin, she says, voice like bark rubbed smooth by river stones. One who understands chemistry earns history. She hands you 2 identical glass ampoules, instructs. One is sweetened vinegar. The other is vitriol. Mix, either with oil and fling. Pick wrong, you blind yourself first. Your pulse hammers as you unstopper each. Vinegar's faint tang is friendly, almost home kitchen. Vitriol smoulders in the nostrils, a serpent's hiss turned liquid. You choose, Isabeau nods approval, and the lesson shifts to antidotes. You learn that full-fat goat's milk counters certain belladonna stews, while raw ammonia revives lungs choked by arsenic smoke. Yet some brews own no cure. She calls these honest poisons, for they keep their promises. She makes you label such vials with a tiny crescent notch filed into glass, a tactile warning for fumbling fingers in moonless rooms. Afternoon, stew lentils laced with sage to clear the mind. Corvinus ushers you into a practice court hidden beneath the tannery yard. Here, flagstones are dusted with chalk lines, concentric circles marking reaction distance, squares indicating blind corners. Wax mannequins stand dressed in merchant coats, monk's habits, guard livery. Your task: move among them as a beggar, then a spice seller, then a lowborn scribe-swapping gait, eye level and breathing rhythm until even you forget which mask is true flesh. Merchants hunch under saddlebags of imagined debt. Scribes stride with scroll, importance. Beggars glide on bent knees but sharp gazes. Sweat pearls down your spine, each disguise a weight you never noticed spectators carry. Failure is loud. Once, your shoulder brushes a chalked line meant to mimic a guard's spear reach. Corvinus slams a staff across your pathclang. Sparks leap, and your heart jams in its cage. Dust knows, he snaps. Stir it, and the night remembers your shape. You repeat until legs quiver and lungs rasp. On the 10th circuit, you slip between mannequins like smoke, leave chalk undisturbed. Corvinus says nothing, yet you glimpse a flicker of concession in his raven black eyes, a silent stamp of provisional approval. Evening folds blue over the city when training mercifully ends. Back in the corridor of coffers, Corvinus allows you one personal selection. You choose a slim roll of lock-pick-stempered steel, handles wrapped in kid skin, smelling faintly of cloves the craftsman chewed while working. They feel honest in your palmless final than poison, more forgiving than knives. Corvinus seals the rest away. Lamp doused, door relocked, he drops the sparrow key into a hidden pocket near his heart. Tools, he repeats, are stories. Guard them, and perhaps the tale will obey your pen instead of your pulse. You slip into the dormitory loft, lockpicks tucked beside the misericord, and pray both will remain obedient ink rather than spilt blood before this perilous week finds its cruel conclusion. Dusk slinks across the city on padded paws, swallowing streets one crooked gable at a time. Candles bloom behind shutter slits like watchful amber eyes, and chimney smoke flattens beneath a low sky, bruised the colour of stale plums. Tonight you hunt, though the guild calls it pattern redinga, softer phrase, as if murder were a pastime of librarians. Corvinus slides a parchment map into your palm, ink still tacky. A red X marks a townhouse near the river district. Observe, only observe, he warns. voice muted by scarf and twilight. A blade unsheathed too early cuts the hand that holds it. You set out dressed as a threadbare clerk, hood sagging, quill case rattling with pebbles instead of parchment. The misericord rests in a calf sheath, but Corvinus's rule rings, steel sleeps unless woken by certainty. Fog rolls off the water, curling through alley mouths and slimming lantern light to ghostly smears. Each breath tastes of ash and eel brine. Each footstep echoes as though the cobbles remember every sin ever whispered into them. Your task seems simple, Track. A spice broker, allegedly funneling coin toward a rebel duke butt, simplicity in guild parlance, is a cat that hides its claws. First, you anchor yourself in the rhythm of the quarter. You learn the river breeze coughs each time the Southgate watch turns their hourglass, that a one-eyed fishmonger bangs crates precisely 7 times before stalling for the night, that a toothless balladeer lingers beneath the arched bridge until Vespers toll, then totters home by way of St. Briget's Lane. These metronomes of ordinary life are your cloak. When their beats falter, you'll feel it as surely as a sparrow feels the hush before hawk shadow. The townhouse sits wedged between a cooper's yard and a scriptorium whose windows burp lacquer smells. Yellow panes reveal silhouettes drifting behind oiled parchment. Once a broad shape maybe, the broker himself closes curtains with the finality of a slammed tombstone. You choose a perch inside a derelict bell tower across the lane. The climb is a study in silence, toes to stone, fingers on mortar, breath rationed in slow, even sips. Pigeons coo indignantly, but do not scatter. You've practiced the art of becoming background noise. From a rotted louvre, you survey the street. Fog lights on puddles, turning them to pewter mirrors that copy every lantern twice. You sketch the scene upon your memory's vellum. A wrought iron gate creaks when the night soil cart rattles by. A gutter spout drips 3 floors above the townhouse door, counting seconds like a leaky sandglass. Most cruciale second-story shuttersill bows outward, warped by age, giving just enough foothold for entry if one knew where to test their weight. These are not details, they are future lifelines. Hours seep past. The city's din relaxes into after-curfew hush, as though the whole quarter exhales. Yet the townhouse yawns awake, its back door opens, spilling a wedge of lamplight onto mud. 2 men in plain cloaks emerge, lugging a crate no bigger than a cradle. Their whispered curses drift up, clipped by accent border dialect, not local. They load the chest onto a handcart and roll it toward the Quay Road. Instinct begs pursuit, but you leash it. Corvinus's edict only observe binds tighter than rope. Instead, you ghost down the bell tower ladder, trailing at a distance. Every skill from the chalk circle course breathes through your muscles. Step in wagon ruts to muffle crunch. Pause when the cart's wheel jolts over cobble lips. Sync breath with their oaths, so yours dissolves in theirs. Fog thickens near the river, swallowing ankles, then shins. Lantern halos shrink to trembling coins. At Hook Chain Bridge, the pair hand off the crate to a hooded woman whose gloved fingers glitter with tin leaf sigil smugglers' safe conduct charms. Payment changes hands, not coin, but a slim ledger wrapped in waxed cloth. You file each gesture. The woman inspects the ledger beneath a pier torch, nods once, then melts into an underarched door. You hadn't noticed a door so flush with masonry, it looks like shadow until it swallows her. The men trudge back crateless, shoulders lighter. Every fibre in you thrums to follow the ledger, to peel wax until names bleed out. Yet, discipline prevails. You reverse trail, map their footsteps home, count the candles relit in the townhouse windows. By matins, the street lies dormant, water rats nosing watch-it blue dawn puddles, and you retreat unseen. Back at the tannery safe house, Corvinus listens, motionless as a bolted statue, while you recount each beat, warped sill, dripping gutter, border accents, tin leaf sigils. He never interrupts, but the furrow between his brows deepens, ploughing silent approval. When you finish, he produces a strip of scarlet silk the width of 2 fingers. A marker, he says, pinning it to your jerkin's inner hem. For work well stalked. No silver, no praise-just cloth, destined never to be seen by daylight eyes. In the guild, recognition must hide as deeply as sin. Sleep finds you on a straw pallet just before sunrise, yet rest remains wary, hovering like a cat at the threshold. Behind your lids, fog still curls, shutters still groan. A warped sill beckons like a crooked finger. You understand now that stalking is not mere tailing. It is communion with a place until it speaks names it hasn't said aloud. Tomorrow, you may breach that bowing windowsill. Tomorrow, steel might wake. But tonight, the city's slow heart pulses through your dreams, whispering in guttered Latin, watch. Listen. The blade hungers, but patience fattens the kill. Sunrise smoulders behind slate roofs, like coals hidden beneath wet ash, and Corvinus wakes you before the first bell. His knock is a raven's tap against the dormitory shutter, no words, just summons. You buckle worn boots and follow him into the tannery yard, where acrid hides steam in lime pits. Past the vats, he lifts a moss-covered trapdoor. A stairway smells of earth after rain and candle tallow, descending deeper than the forge. Steel is honest, he reminds you as lamplight wavers, but some nights call for subtler confessions. The air cools, heavy with loam and something sweeter, almost floral, yet edged with iron. The stair ends in a cavernous grotto, lit by thin shafts of day, filtering through chinks high above. Clay pots crowd wooden benches, vines twist across trellises, and glass cloches bead with condensation like pearls on mourning cloth. Mistress Isabeau kneels among her children, pruning a wolfsbane plant whose blossoms mimic indigo velvet. She does not look up. Our watcher joins us, she says, voice steady as mortar stone. Time to learn how gardens lie. A black catone, eyed, tail crook, ended perches on a shelf, surveilling you with the dubious mercy of gods older than scripture. Isabeau hands you worn leather gloves, dusted with pale green pollen. First lesson, she murmurs. Every plant is a sermon. Dosage decides whether it preaches healing or damnation. She guides you to angelica stalks that smell of honeyed fennel. Boiled in milk, angelica breaks fever, she explains, then pinches the second node where sap pearls amber. Distill this with alum and ash, you birth a draught that slows heartbeats to the tempo of a burial drum. Her fingers slice the stem, cloudy resin beads like tears of chalk, and you sense the sacrilege of turning life into stillness. Next comes belladonna deadly nightshade berries, glistening mottled black wine. Isabeau crushes one inside a pewter spoon, purple juice dripping. Pain, lessening if kissed to gums, she says, But let 3 berries steep in mead, and sleep becomes an oubliette with no ladder. She gestures for you to taste the residue against your tongue. Metallic bitterness blooms, then numbness spider crawls across palate and lips. You spit into a clay jar, throat fluttering like a snared finch. Remember that sting, she advises. It is the only warning some poisons afford. At a work table of mortars, you grind dried foxglove petals digitalis until they powder to pinkish dust. Each pestle stroke syncs with your heartbeat, as though the plant already masters your rhythm. Corvinus records weight on a copper scale, etching marks into wax tablets you once saw used for forged seals. Numbers here are stakes. A dram too heavy, an aristocrat convulses mid-toast, arousing guards. A dram too light, the mark merely sweats and survives to sound alarm. Precision is the assassin's lullaby, monotonous, vital, terrifying. Isabeau produces 2 stoppered amphorae, vermilion cinnabar, and chalk, white calomel. Mercury, she says, is a silent chorister, sings only inside blood. You craft pastes, folding powder into goose fat, so toxins pass unseen beneath fingernails. The smell minerally, sanguine ecklings to nostrils like regret. She nods approval, then turns to a bronze brazier where charcoal sighs. Into a crucible, you drop fragments of bitter almonds. Heat teases, prussic acid, vapor cyanide ghosts, rising invisible. You hold breath, counting 5, 10, 15, slide on a clay lid before your lungs beg. When you inhale again, the air feels heavier, as if aware you flirted with an emperor of quiet ends. Mid-afternoon, the garden's half-light shifts, shafts of sun-quilt drifting dust. Isabeau finally addresses the cat, stroking its notch-tailed spine. Demonstration, she states. A cage with 2 grey mice appears. Into a thimble, she mixes honey, wine, and 3 grains of your freshly milled digitalis. One mouse drinks, the other does not. You watch the dosed creature groom whiskers, eyes bright. Minutes pass. Its breaths grow shallow, forepaws splay. It tips sideways like a fallen coin. A hush settles, thick as candle wax. The twin mouse sniffs its companion, unknowing witness to the thin border between motion and myth. Emotion rises guilt, tinted with fascination, yet Corvinus's earlier counsel echoes. Doubt is deadlier than any guard. You catalogue time to collapse, muscle tremor, final exhalation. Isabeau erases sentiment with one sentence. Mercy and murder are siblings, both end suffering. The difference is who speaks the prayer. She gestures at a ledger of targets, rebels, blackmailers, plague profiteers, and scarlet inked the spice broker you shadowed. Some names wear the dagger sigil, others a droplet. Yours is to choose which symbol the broker earns after further watch. You swallow hard. The garden's perfumed air suddenly tastes of verdict. Before dusk, you craft field kits. Blown glass bulbs sealed with pine pitch, wax, stoppered vials sewn into belt loops, and hollow signet rings that twist to reveal pin-prick reservoirs. Isabeau tests each seal beneath water, watching for betrayals of silver bubbles. None escape. She gifts you a sprig of rue bound in twine protection, she claims, against wayward doses. Corvinus pockets 3 nightshade capsules with monkish solemnity. Blades fail where distance wins, he notes. But every poison is a path that curves back to its maker. Be certain of wind and conscience alike. When you ascend the stair, evening bells drone like slow heartbeats through fog-soft streets. You step into open air, carrying death in silk-lined packets, yet the sky burns vermilion, indifferent and beautiful. In the tannery loft, you unwrap your misericord, lay it beside vials under lantern glow, steel and tincture, night's twin orphans, craving purpose. Sleep will stalk you again, but for now you sit by the shutter gap, listening to the city's restless pulse. Somewhere a child laughs, somewhere a widow prays, and somewhere a spice broker counts coins, unaware his fate may brew in petals and powder you measured this very day. You breathe rue-scented air, whisper one uncertain vowlet, only the deserving drink darkness. Then let the shutter close, sealing fragrant dread inside the quiet that precedes your next impossible choice. Dawn's first blush never reaches the guild dormitory. Its slit windows face a smoke-black alley where sunrise is strangled by overhanging eaves. You awaken to the scent of boiled cabbage drifting up from the tannery kitchen shumble fare for apprentices, but today you must fast. Corvinus says, an empty stomach silences a rumbling conscience. You tie back hair with rough twine, tug on a wool doublet 3 sizes too large, and smear ash along cheekbones. A beggar's disguise, though it smells faintly of lavender, Mistress Isabeau's subtle benediction against fleas and suspicion both. Corvinus meets you in the passage of coffers, already transformed. His cloak dismissed, he wears a journeyman mason's jerkin, streaked with mortar dust, nails purposefully blackened. Only the eyes betray him obsidian beads that miss nothing. Today we practice the longest blade, he says. Not steel story. He hands you a tatty satchel of dull combs and cracked mirror trinkets to hawk in market lanes. A lie must breathe before it walks, he explains. So we let the city test ours. If by sundown no guard questions your name, no stallholder guesses your trade, the mask is declared living skin. If not, his shrug is the rest of the lesson. Fog still lingers when you cross St. Margaret's Square, where pigeon droppings fleck the martyr's statue like unshed tears. You pitch your beggar merchant routine near the well, voice hoarse, posture collapsed inward. Every gesture is script. Thumb nervously rubbing the satchel strap, shoulders hiked as though accustomed to cold. The first passerby a brewer's Wi-Fi's your wares with pity, tosses a chipped farthing into your palm. Its weight shocks. Validation carved in copper. The mask takes its first breath. Mid-morning the square blossoms with noise. Fishmongers shriek prices. Minstrels strum vials polished brighter than their teeth. You mimic the rhythm, hawking cracked mirrors as moon catchers, said to scare off nightmares. Children giggle, beg for proof. You flick ash onto the glass, tilting it until sunlight dazzles their eyes. They squeal and flee, convinced. A real merchant might celebrate coin. You celebrate believability. Each gullible smile stitches the mask tighter. Yet markets are arenas where truth wrestles rumours for sport. A town bailiff stalks between stalls, tallying taxes. He stops at yours. Permit token, he demands. Your pulse knocks ribs, but you slump deeper, mumble the cover line. Corvinus drilled. Master gave none, sirenly me, wares and debt. You show the cracked combs, let desperation cloud gaze. The bailiff snorts, exacts 2 combs as bribe, moves on. Relief floods like spiced wine, warming even empty stomach. Lie passes its first audit. After noon bells, you adopt a new mask. Down Ragpicker Lane, you become Johanna, the seamstress seeking lost siblings inside taverns. A scarf hides the ash streaks, Tur summoned by a pinch of nightshade dust near your eyelid glisten convincingly. Inside the halfpence inn, you question drunk scribes about a brother who never existed, gleaning gossip as naturally as a leech draws blood. From their slurred boasts, you harvest 4 whispers. A royal courier arrives tonight. The spice broker's books will be inspected by city bursars soon. A foreign envoy has vanished, and plague flickers again in riverside hovels. Each tidbit slots into gilt brass cylinders for later ciphering. You leave before the dusted tears fade. Outside, rain begins, thin as harp strings. Crowds thin too. Mask work grows harder when observers are few and gazes linger longer. You duck beneath the colonnade, casting quick glances on mirrored puddles to ensure ash still disguises cheekbones, scarf still hides nightshade-reddened eyes. Reflection shows a stranger's shoulders slightly crooked from hours of feigned civility, jaw slack, lashes clumped with artificial sorrow. You repeat your alias under breath. Johanna, daughter of ill fortune, thread, poor, hope, richer. The line steadies the wobble inside. Because the danger isn't forgetting the truth, it's letting the lie become it. Eventide drapes the square in burnt orange. Corvinus reappears, Mason's guise smudged by real rain. He buys one of your cracked mirrors, with theatrical scorn, and mutters, "Follow." You shadow him into an abandoned cloister where ivy strangles stone saints. There, he assesses the day's harvest coins, rumours, bailiff encounter times, to the quarter bell. He tests you with rapid-fire questions. How many steps from well to grain stall? Which hand did the courier favour while dismounting? What colour ribbon bound the broker's ledger? You answer, lightning quick, and only falter once you reversed left and right on the courier's grip. Corvinus taps your forehead with 2 fingers. Even a small lie can unravel a cloak. Lesson sown. In the tannery loft, candlelight paints tired faces gold. You wipe ash away, revealing skin beneath crusted layers yours, yet somehow estranged. Corvinus sets a jug of watered ale between you. Some assassins drown in the roles they play, he confides, voice softer than forge hiss. They forget the hearth smell of their first house, the cadence of their own laughter. Keep a relic. He slides a plain pewter button across the table, claims it fell from your sleeve while trailing the broker days ago. Stitch it somewhere unseen. When masks threaten to fuse, touch the metal, remember the hand that lost it. Later, alone under thatched gloom, you sew the button inside your jerkin lining with thread pilfered from tavern benches. Each stitch knots self to memory. Outside, wind keens through alley teeth, rattling shutters like bones in a gambler's cup. You nestle against straw, feel the misericord's cold spine, smell rue sprig still tucked in pouch, and thumb the secret button. Tonight you finally understand. Steel, poison, forged seals, these are tools, but lies are architecture. You have begun constructing halls of deception so vast that 1 week might be too long to find the exit. Sleep nibbles edges of sight. Before surrender, you whisper you're given Namano the gills, not Johannito the straw, just to prove it still fits your own ears. Curfew drums roll just after sunset, their dull thrum echoing off stone like warning heartbeats. You stand in the tannery loft, watching braziers flare along the parapets, each flame a sentinel eye. The city has rules once the drums cease, gates barred, shutters bolted, streets ceded to watchmen, and whatever prowls where law thins. Corvinus presses a waxed map into your handles, rendered in spider-fine ink, sewer grates marked with cruciform scratches. Night belongs to no one, he tells you, tightening the strap of your satchel. But the watch claims rent in flesh when it finds trespassers. Mind their rhythms or become their toll. Tonight's task is reconnaissance, final proof before the guild decides steel or poison for the spice broker. You must chart every gate patrol between the River District and North Curtain Wall, note torch tempo, dog routes, bell change signals. Information, Corvinus insists, is the scabbard that keeps any blade from slicing its wielder. You leave the safe house clothed again as Johanna, but dusk has leached the colour from that mask. Under curfew, every pedestrian is suspect. Disguise must rely not on face, but on absence. You are a ripple in gloom, nothing more. St. Margaret's Square lies deserted now, market filth swept away by rain and law. A watch pair tramps the arcade, chainmail clinking like wind chimes caught in a funeral hymn. They carry lanterns hooded in red glassless glare, clearer night sight, and each grips a billhook long enough to snag rooftops. You shadow them at measured distance. Matching boot falls to theirs, so any echo counts only twice. At the West Arch, they exchange coded taps on iron. 2 short, 1 long. You etch it onto memory's tablet. That rhythm unlocks the portcullis winch if emergencies sound. Past the arcade, you slip through a latrine yard and lift a loose board behind a cooperage. Ammoniac stench claws your nostrils, but the passage inside is vital. A crawl space threading beneath a minor watchtower directly to Holywell Street. You discovered it yesterday while fetching rumours. Tonight, you test its promise. Slithering on elbows, you feel each heartbeat scrape rib on earth. The misericord tangles with belt loops, vials clink like fretful cicadas. You reach the far exit, pry slats, and emerge into shadow behind a wagon safe, unspotted. The board slides back, erasing you. Holywell's cobbles glisten with moon sheen, fog skulks knee, high, perfect cover for dogs' noses, poor for human eyes. Watchmen use mastiffs, hear low growl, high vengeance. You fish a twist of smoked offal from satchel, tinctured lightly with Isabeau's poppy extract. The first mastiff rounds a hinge-creaking corner, handler yawning. You toss the decoy into an alcove. Dog trots, sniffs, devours. Within minutes, its gait will muddle into dream steps, handler none the wiser. He tugs the slack lead, curses soft, moves on. You tally interval. Patrol revisits every 15 minutes longer than presumed. Approaching Northgate, you taste sea wind folded into night air, torches hiss with briny damp. Here, the city armory stores spare Pike's extra vigilance. Gatehouse windows, leak lamplight, silhouettes flicker, 1 sentry seated, 1 pacing. On the quarter hour, a bell clanks, and both swap roles. You sketch a mental loop. Pace counts 30 strides. Seated man drinks from flagon on alternate shifts. A vulnerability wine dims hearing. You also note the winch lock glows faintly where oil dribbled earlier. An ember tossed there would jam the chain and delay pursuit. From a buttress you spy the broker's townhouse far off, its shutters stark against moon-milk sky. Tonight its windows stay dark, yet a lantern bobs along the quay road, same hooded woman with tin-leaf charms you marked before. She shepherds another crate onto a moored barge. You inhale river rot, reckon tide schedule. Vessel will sail near dawn, sneaking past sleepy harbour masters. Your route home bends to the water. Bridge guard stands bored, tracing patterns in frost with halberd tip. You wait. Fog thickens. Church bell tolls terse of the night. At that clang, he performs a ritual stretch facing east. 5-second blind spot enough. You dart across plank shadows, heart pummeling ribs like fists on tavern doors. On return, you test redundancies. If the cooperage crawlspace failed, could you scale drainage hooks? You attempt it, fingers numb on cold iron, body a pendulum over cess water. Halfway up, you freeze distant hoofbeats drumstone. A mounted patrol emerges, lantern spearing rooftops. You cling, breath cinched. Light passes, catching only rain-wet brick. You crest the parapet, collapse into gutter stink, then laugh, unheard, but for gargoyles. Fear tonight feels differentless claw, more whetstone, sharpening focus. Inside the tannery loft, Corvinus awaits like a question mark cast in ink. You spill observations. 2, short, 1 long tap, poppy-sated dog, 30-pace rotation, drunken sentry, ember, weak chain. He carves each note onto kid skin, fingers deft. At mention of the barge, his brow arches. Sea route, he murmurs, interesting. He fetches a small river map, marks currents, scribbles sunrise. We strike soon. Your stomach hollows not fear of the hit, but of the choice looming, dagger or droplet. Corvinus sees the question in your eyes and answers. Information chooses method. Let gates and curfew decide. Sleep visits lightly as a cat stepping over broken glass. Fog curls through cracked shutter, brushing straw wisps. You feel the pewter button under jerkin, thumb its cool curve, remember the marketplace laughter. Beyond walls, curfew drums fall silent night's final decree. Yet, you have learned the city answers with its own language. Tap codes, fog pockets, wine, slow guards, poppy, quiet dogs. The night fights back, yes, but every defense hums a pattern. And patterns, once memorized, become keys. Clutching that thought, you drift toward uneasy rest, flanked by steel on one side, poisons on the other, both waiting for the pattern that will declare which song they must sing. First light spills through abbey arches like watered wine, stippling flagstones with pale rose. You arrive before lords robed in undyed wool, cowl shadowing your hard-forged eyes. The habit itches, coarse under, weaver braids collarbones, but discomfort is faith's twinth brethren will notice neither. Brother Aldrich, infirmarian and covert guild sympathizer, greets you with faint nod. He's left a monk's tonsure kappa ring of lambskin sheared to scalp, sheen steeping overnight in vinegar, so the smell of piety clings. You settle it atop hair, cold, damp kisses skull. In the cloister's hush, you practice the monk's gait. Shoulders humble, gaze sunrise, soft, palms hidden within sleeves as though cradling invisible prayers. The ruse has purpose beyond devotion. The spice broker's ledgers, Corvinus discovered, are escorted this very noon to a cathedral scriptorium where scribes will counterfeit accounts for tax immunity. A monk may pass unchecked where beggars falter. Aldrich places a quill and scraped parchment in your sleeve pocket credentials on vellum bearing the bishop's faded seal. The Latin motto reads, Relicta saxa, viva scriptura. Stones may crumble, but writings endure. You think of nights' secret taps on iron, of chalkless steps through fog, and wonder which writings truly last. When chapel bells summon brothers, you join the chant. Gregorian tones vibrate chest cavity, taming heartbeat to sacred tempo. You imitate the sign of peace, trade whispered, pax tecum, with novices smelling of beeswax and old straw. Aldrich slips a key into your palm during the bow, its bow stamped with a choir knife motif entry to the scriptorium's locked archive. At chapter's end, you fold into procession, exit through the west gate, and head toward the cathedral district, bathed now in full midsummer gold. Your sandals slap rhythmically, mea culpa, each step confessing crimes not yet committed. Inside the scriptorium, you surrender parchment and quill to a steward, with quills tucked behind both ears, like flightless wings. He points you to a writing desk facing stained glass. From here you watch couriers unload sealed ledgers 3 folios, bound in cinnamon-dyed hide. While scribes brew ink, you copy innocuous psalms, ears pricked for talk. 2 clerks mutter of foreign coin laundered through spice trucks. One jokes the broker owes indulgences thicker than pepper dust. Noonlight shifts. Stained glass saints bleed ruby across the desk, tinting your hands martyr red. A distraction, a novice upends an inkpot, indigo floods oak grain. While stewards scold, you pocket a sliver of sealing wax chipped from the broker's folio. Its cresta double-headed salamander matches gild intelligence. Slip wax into sleeve, trade psalm sheet for fresh parchment, resume innocent scratches. Minutes later, a sacristan locks the ledgers into an iron coffer, pockets key, and departs toward the cathedral treasury. Mission half won. Now you must trail the sacristan unseen, yet a monk dogging another monk invites notice. Time to shed sanctity. By late afternoon, you reach the East Fish Market, where canvas booths reek of brine and eel slime. You duck into a cooper's shed, exchange habit for a minstrel's motley bundled earlier by Corvinus. Hose dyed saffron, yellow, jerkin patched rose, madder, cap tipped with tiny hawkbell. Disguise sits garish atop morning's quiet holiness, but that contrast is camouflage. You dust face with flour, redden cheeks with pokeberry pulp, sling a battered lute across backstrings, already tuned to tavern merriment. The monk ceases, the jester inhales. At dusk, wine lamps flare along the riverside hostelry, sign of the Gilded Fig, where the guild's crow messengers swear the broker dines each vespers. You prance through doors, amid applause, hungry for diversion. Lute thrums spark laughter, and you launch into bawdy ballad about a miller, a midwife, and 3 impossible geese. While diners clap ale-sticky hands, your gaze tracks the broker. a lean man cloaked in indigo velvet, salamander signet, flashing whenever he pinches roast capon. He laughs, careless, while underlings whisper. When you lean on his table mid-jest, you note wine's bouquet hinting almond Isabeau's bitter pit poison. No taste bud memory, says plum brandy. Good. The guild's hand hasn't struck yet. Observation continues. Between verses you drift tavern floor, trading ribald rhymes for copper coins, yet eyes chart exits, guard stances, layout of pillars. You feign tuning lute behind a tapestry, slip into pantry corridor. There you press wax chip against cooling tallow candle softens, just enough to take halfway imprint of salamander crest. Evidence secured, you return before absence breeds suspicion, launching final verse that ends with exaggerated lute string snap audible excuse for swift exit. Tavern roars approval. Broker tosses a silver groat you catch, with minstrel's grin, hiding assassin's calculus. Moon climbs as you cross footbridge toward tannery, motley bundled under cloak. Each lantern you pass feels interrogation bright, yet no watch cries halt. At Safe House, Corvinus and Isabeau wait in map room, scented of oak gall, ink and rue. You present wax imprint and account, coffer key path, ledger crest match, tavern guard count 2 heavy with crossbows, 1 narrow, eyed but drunk. Corvinus rolls salamander seal between thumb and forefinger. Steel would sing too loud in that tavern crowd, he judges. Isabeau smiles thinly, unlocking a cedar coffer. Then let the silence speak, she says, revealing a silk-lined vial of clear liquor, flecked with gold leaf beautiful as dawn, lethal as foxglove's kiss. Assignments settle like dusk ash. Tomorrow, same tavern, same motley, but lute, strings brushed with toxin that transfers through sweat to skin. One handshake mid-encore will suffice. You bow assent, yet mirror mind shows monk's cowl folded in corner, pouring for redemption. You finger the pewter button, sewn in jerkin lining, pulse finding steadier pace. Masks whirl, sure, yet the relic anchors. Outside, bells toll compline, a calm, steady beat. You lie on straw, lute beside misericord, replay day's double lives, monk at dawn, minstrel by dusk, assassin always beneath. Sleep comes like careful applause, slow and inevitable, promising one more sunrise to perfect the art of wearing faces that are not your own. Sunrise washes the tannery walls in pale gold, but inside the map room, the glow comes from one candle, its flame steady as an oath. Corvinus crouches over a parchment latticeles sketched in soot-black ink, intersections pricked by red thorns. Roots fail, but letters survive, he says without turning. Before the minstrel plays tonight, the guild must know he's in place. He passes you a slender dispatch, rolled around a splinter of whalebone. The paper feels weightless, yet the cipher coiled within outweighs steel. If the watch intercepts, names unravel like rotten thread. The message must ride a chain of dead drop-shiding places the guild refreshes every week, so pattern seekers starve. Your path curls through quarters, patrolled by rival spies and rat-gnawed urchins alike. One misstep, one curious child, one overeager cat-nosing wax, and the whole lattice collapses. Corvinus sketches a sigil on your palm with alder charcoal, a circle pierced by 2 crescent moons mark of the guild runner. If disaster snarls, any safe contact who sees the sign will burn the roots, scatter fresh ones. And if you are taken, he adds quietly. You both know that answer requires neither ink nor air. You set out in greying drizzle, dressed as anonymous as fog in a dyer's plain woolson bleached by lie, colourless as a secret. At wharf end you slip the scroll behind a loose brick beneath the statue of St. Elpis. Patron of hopeless endeavour, sir, jest the guild relishes. A washerwoman approaches, humming off-key. You lean against the plinth, pretending to tie laces until she hobbles past. Stone saints and mortal sinners share the square. Only you know words now sleep behind the sandstone. Second drop lies in Candlewick Lane, beneath an abandoned beehive nailed high on a shutter. You clamber crates, fingers numb from drizzle, wedge the new packet in wax comb cells, careful not to crush honey's brittle ghosts. Few souls will probe a hive, even empty. The memory of stings is guard enough. Below, a constable in oilcloth cape trudges, muttering about overdue ale. You freeze, muscles singing from the climb. Rain drums on the hive roof, masking your breath. When the constable disappears, you slip down, heart thudding a fugue. Third relay beats tightest, a fountain in scholars close where beggar girls trade rumours for bread crusts. You kneel as if to drink, fingers gliding under the lionhead spout. There, in its rust-slick maw, a lead capsule waits last night's courier, dead-handing it forward. You fish it out, slide your scroll in, and reseat the plug. One waif's eyes glimmer at the motion. You toss her a copper groat payment for silence, and she scampers, grin crooked as alley tiles. Children are unreliable walls, but kindness mortars a quicker seal than fear. Now to the scriptorium, final node before the tavern strike. You enter cloaked, presenting Brother Aldrich's borrowed token. Scribes bustle, none note your damp cloak or the capsule you palm under folds. In a dim alcove you unthread a tapestry, revealing a hollow pedestal foot. Inside, stacked like brittle prayers, slumber dozens of lead tubes. You slip yours among them, reseat the tapestry fringe. 40 seconds, no more. Outside, bells clang sext, parchment, dust motes dance in nave light. The message has vanished into the hive. My next hands will unpack, cipher, disperse fresh coils. Mission half done, but inkwork remains, forging the tavern's performer's ledger so an extra minstrel seems pre-approved. In a nearby scrivener's loft, you meet Catalin, the guild's youngest pen witch, hair ink black to match her trade. She lays reeds, pumice, and oak gall solution like altar vessels. The ledger page awaits, edges deckled, lines neat as monk's psalm. Copy clerk's hand perfectly, she warns, tapping a reference slip. Her quill dances, showing stroke order down, curve, flick. You practice thrice? She slashes 2 attempts, saves the third with nod. A swirl of cinnabar wax seals the sheet dragonfly red, quickly chilled. Your alias, Ilias the Many-Mused, now exists in tavern records, wages owing 2 silvers by midnight. Back in streets, drizzle thickens into earnest rain. You duck into a cooper's porch, review mental map, messages safe, ledger forged, poison, loot, prepared by Isabeau in velvet roll. Yet one risk gnaws the washerwoman at St. Elpis. Did her off-key hum mask watchful suspicion? A rule echoes: never retrace steps, but doubt is louder. You circle wide, skirting Tanner's Row, peer from a cloth stall. Relief, brick still ajar, statue unmolested. The woman scrubs sheets by river, attention stolen by gossip of plague barges downstream. Night's tension loosens in your jaw. Evening glimmers, tavern shutters glow amber, laughter bubbling like over strong mead. Motleys gather beneath the awning, tuning lutes, adjusting feathered caps. You join, brandishing the forged ledger page. The doorman eyes roomy, but cautious scans seal, compares to book shrugs. Stage is yours after the juggler with geese. Inside, ale fumes mingle with roast nutmeg. Somewhere amid tankards sits the spice broker, cloak salamander pinned, ledger audits postponed, death tuning its strings nearby. But first, you steal to a candle-lit corner, unroll Isabeau's poisoned gut strings, and restring lute swift as Cardshark shuffles decks. Beads of clear toxin glint along new chords like dew on spider, silk deadly if absorbed through sweat, harmless to calloused fingertips if you remember not to wipe brow. You pluck, sound rings honey, sweet, hiding viper fangs. Curtain time approaches. The juggler's finale erupts in feathers and honks, crowd roars. You step onto low stage, motley bells tinkling a prelude, pewter button warm against heart. Faces blur under lantern heat until one freezes. The broker, leaning forward, eager for encore. You strike first chord music blooming, poison breathing. Each verse drifts closer to his table, lyric weaving sly satire about merchants and salamanders. Laughter swirls, sweat pearls on broker's palms. Final refrain, you leap to bench beside him, extend a camaraderie handshake. A coin for the chorus, good sir? He grasps skin slips over poisoned strings residue. You bow, release, pivot into flourish. Applause drowns, faint gasp. In minutes, his forearm will prickle. In an hour, heartbeats stumble. By dawn, he will be legend of sudden ailment, tavern none the wiser. You exit into rain-washed night, lute silent now, strings gleaming under torch smear. Behind, tavern windows buzz. Ahead, curfew drums loom. Ink, wax, and whispered roots carried the blade to night no steel unsheathed. And somewhere, in the hollow of St. Elpis's plinth, a scroll sleeps, testament that sometimes the darkest ink is the one no eye will ever see. Dawn crawls over the city on raw knuckles, knuckling mist away from eaves and steeples. You sit in the tannery loft, cloak half dry, lute silent at your side. Every heartbeat thuds like a mallet on wet hide. The spice broker is dead news delivered by a crow feather token left on the windowsill an hour ago. No hue and cry in the streets. The guild's poison behaved, slipping him from laughter to rigour, while his servants still argued over unpaid tabs. You should feel triumph. Instead, your stomach churns with a sourness bread and broth cannot wash away. The lute strings you restrung now lie coiled in a clay, brazier crackling, hissing, burning their crimes into harmless ash. Corvinus enters, boots whispering across rush-strewn planks. He offers neither praise nor blame, only a small obsidian bed the guild's formal tally for a successful contract. Keep it, he says, voice low. One day you will weigh these beads against your ribs. He waits, perhaps expecting gratitude. You pocket the stone, its surface colder than Winter Creek water, and wonder how many such beads rattle in the cloak he never removes. But the week's curriculum has no recess for remorse. A parchment announces fresh work. An informerant's valuable now threatens the guild's web, extorting triple fees under threat of exposure. His hiding place, the ruined bathhouse on Pilgrim Street, where plague wards keep watchmen wary. Corvinus chooses steel for this task. Public rot already skirts the area. Subtle poisons risk spreading panic, closing routes the guild relies on. Besides, he mutters, sometimes the hand must remember its oldest language, a language you spoke only once on that first rooftop. You descend into armory gloom, where Master Hrodgar appraises you like flawed ore. He presents an arming dagger broader than your misericord, fuller etched in waves, grip leather braided tight. Swift, brutal, forgettable, he says, sliding blade into plain ash scabbard. Leave fancy handles to knights who need poems. Before you depart, he pours a dram of spirit across Edger, blessing of fire and iron. The liquid flashes blue, evaporates, leaving steel hungry. Near dusk, you approach Pilgrim Street, beneath a shawl that reeks of camphor and rosemary herbs to fool plague ward masks should they sniff. The bathhouse looms, a sagging dome, windows blind with soot, door hanging limp like a broken jaw. Faded frescoes of nymphs and stags grin through grime. Wind moans down hypercaust vents. Somewhere inside, rats scuttle orchestral preludes. You slip through a gap in the portico and taste the stale humidity of long-cooled pools. Your pewter button skims fingertips as if reminding you of laughter and linen days ago. Then you loosen the dagger in its sheath and silence memories. Echo guides you every drip from fractured pipe, every pebble kicked by your soft-soled boot. A coughing fit rasps from the tepidarium where once patrons steamed ailments away. You hover in an archway, see him, the informer, cloaked in matted furs, face gaunt beneath hood. He kneels over a brazier, warming thin hands, pages scattered like dead moths around him, records of bribes, schedules, safe names. One bundle bears a crimson ribbon the gilds. Your pulse spikes. He hasn't sold you yet, but the moment ink meets rival palms, scores of shadows glow in torchlight. You cross mosaic tiles on cat feet, each step woven into the hiss of leaking pipes. 10 paces. 7. 4. A final patch of lamplight must be breached. You time it with his cough, dart forward, palm muffling mouth, opposite hand slicing blade under ribcage, angled up. The earlier kill was silent poison. This is thunder in flesh. The dagger meets cartilage, then soft organs resistance, then warmth a flood that soaks wrist. His scream dies in swallowed blood. Eyes widen, search your face for verdict or mercy. You have neither to offer, so you press deeper until breath gutters out. He slumps, and you are suddenly aware of the roaring in your ears, of how your lungs drag air like wet cloth. The mosaic beneath blooms crimson, staining blue tesserae that once mimicked spring sky. You pry the ribboned packet from his clutch, stuff it in satchel, hot fluids, slick notes, melding secrets into pulp. nothing salvageable for enemies. But the blade you see your reflection, warped along its gore-slick length, a face you barely recognize. Monk, minstrel, beggar, clerk, assassin-owned skin over another until self becomes palimpsest. From the roof, pigeons startle, plague, wards may have heard echoes. You drag the body to a plunge pool empty of water, heavy with cobwebs, tip him in. Rats will argue over bones, the city will blame plague or thieves. Before leaving, you scrub dagger on mossy towel, then slice parchment with guild cipher symbol, dropping sliver into brazier flame. Outside, wind scours cheeks raw, as if the night itself tries scrubbing guilt away. You walk with shoulders low, but inside every heartbeat clangs a church bell, tolling for a soul you never knew. Back at the tannery, you place the dagger on your pallet, sit cross-legged until straw pricks numbed calves awake. Corvinus appears, takes blade without glance, yet his eyes settle on the tremor you failed to hide. He offers a leather flask. Not ale water, laced with rue and mint. For shaking hands, he says. Poison steals from a distance. Steel demands payment up front. You drink, bitter blend coating tongue, and something in your chest loosens, though not comfort more, like acceptance of a debt acknowledged. Candle stubs burn low. Outside, the city exhales sleep through countless chimneys. Inside, you lie beside empty scabbard, one obsidian bead, and a pewter button, dimly gleaming relics of two lives wrestling beneath the same skin. You realize grief will echo long after screams fade, and you hope the city's lullaby can drown it before daylight spills again. Dawn is a pale echo when Corvinus shakes you awake. Pack light, he murmurs. His tone has the clipped edge of urgency, ironed flat by practice. The guild's northern lookout tower signalled before moonset. A city watch captain rumoured friendly was arrested after whispering your minstrel alias to the wrong ear. Interrogation looms, and if that name unlaces into threads, every covert staircase you've climbed may glow bright as noon. We relocate, Corvinus says, before torches find our door. Simple words, enormous shadow. Within minutes, the tannery loft turns chrysalis of motion. Isabeau folds vials in straw, cinches them inside pig bladder bladders. Hrodgar grunts, levering small anvils into crates marked salted hides. Catelyn scrapes wet ink from desks, smearing it across her palms so stray letters die. You contribute by tearing down wall maps, rolling them, and on Corvinus's signal touching, a burning taper to tinder piles. Smoke begins its quiet sermon. The safe house must look raided, not abandoned. A lesson in misdirection the guild calls painting the after image. You slip into streets, still glazed with midnight rain. Fog rises from grates like lost prayers, muffling boot clicks. Each guild member disperses on a timed route designed months ago. Isabeau toward river moorings, Hrodgar into Smithy Quarter, Catelyn under abbey crypts to seed new ledgers. Corvinus and you form the western pair, cutting through butchers' arcades, where carcasses hang pale as sailed ships. A butcher lifts burlap, revealing pigskins stitched around daggers Hrodgar's decoys. Corvinus tips 2 fingers. The butcher winks and goes back to humming psalms to meet. Your destination, the Weavers' District, specifically a warren of roof garrets called the Lintels, where loom, noise masks, whispers, and every crossbeam offers anchor for rope swings. It is also home to footpads freelance thieves who respect guild coin, but not always guild faces. To reach it, you must cross Minster Canal, whose stone bridge now bristles with watch pikemen inspecting each passerby. Corvinus studies the cordon, then points to a cluster of mill workers unloading grain barges. We ride their sacks, he decides. Grain dust cloaks faces, loaning anonymity. You shoulder into line, hefting a canvas sack that smells of sour barley and river rot. A bailiff waves workers through after cursory checks, bored. But your heartbeat quickens. One pikeman's gaze lingers on your height, your stride. Then, fortune grained dust from the sack billows into his eyes. He curses, looks away, you shuffle past. Behind, Corvinus tips an invisible hat to the coffin guard. On the far bank, you drop the sack, coughing too. Dust is a better ally than steel, he remarks, wiping specks from lashes. The lintels greet you with hammer throb of looms, every window throbbing like a heart behind ribs. Wooden walkways stitch upper floors, trembling with each shuttle strike. Corvinus leads to an attic, accessed by rope ladder, no door on street level, only this sky mouth. Inside, light slats between warped boards, painting stripes across stacked bales of French Lenina smugglers' cash the guild maintains. The air smells of hemp oil, lavender sachets, and faint old sweat. Temporary roost, Corvinus says. We wait until night clarifies who hunts. Waiting is rarely still. You inventory rations. Restring your misericord's thong. Clean the broad dagger beneath rain-torn cloth. Corvinus scribes updates on parchment to be ferried by a rooftop runner. Hours slump by. Afternoon bells peal. Distant down. Looms hiss to slower rhythm the midday shift change. That's when footpads arrive, as predicted. Two shapes clamber through roof, hatch, cloaks, patched from tapestry offcuts. Their leader, a woman with silver nose ring and grin sharp enough to whittle bone, greets Corvinus with mock bow. Ravens in my rafters, she purrs. What's it worth? Negotiation between thieves is theatre, each line a blade tucked in boot. Corvinus offers sealed packets letters of credit redeemable in neutral ports. Nosering sniffs, accepts, but demands the boy's loot as collateral, apparently rumours of its sweet tone spread. You stiffen strings burned, loot neutralised, but Corvinus only smiles. The instrument sang its last, he replies, revealing charred fragments from brazier. Nosering studies them, amused. Sharp, she says. Bargain struck. Her footpads will mislead patrols, feed watches, tales of assassins fleeing east. In return, the guild leaves a cache of spice cheap compared to lives saved. Dusk stains, sky bruised violet. Footpad scouts report watch dragnets tightening but focused around South Docksbait swallowed. Good. Yet one scout brings troubling coda. Someone else hunts, independent of watch figures in crimson half-masks asking tavern keepers about a minstrel with pewter button. Foreign accent. Crimson masks, the Red Apostles, zealot network selling blood for prophecy. Their presence ups the stakes, they rarely leave witnesses. Corvinus's jaw sets like iron in quench. Tonight we keep moving. He sketches new path over rooftops across the Threadneedle Belfry, down to St. Olwen's graveyard, through ossuary tunnels to a fresh lair beneath a glassblower's shop. A long flight, he acknowledges. Loom sounds fade as night deepens. Lamps in the lintels wink out one by one. You don coil of rope, adjust satchel, touch pewter button. Its cool steadiness grounds you. Above, wind gnaws broken shingles, city breathing damp secrets. Corvinus swings onto balcony rail, gestures, go. You follow, soles gripping warped wood, muscles singing memory of chalk-circled training. Each leap, rooftop to rooftop, feels like punctuation in a sentence the night is writing about survival. Somewhere below, watch bells jangle false news, footpads laugh in dark. Ahead, cathedral spire spears moonlight guiding needle. Behind, perhaps crimson masks slither. For now, silence is parachute and prayer alike, billowing as you run, weightless, across the city that still hasn't decided whether to brand you ghost or gallows shadow before the week's fragile candle gutters out. A pale half moon hovers above St. Olwen's bell tower as you and Corvinus drop into the churchyard, boots whisper soft on frost-crisp grass. The night flight has scraped the city's skyline into your lungs. Each breath rattles like dice in a beggar's cup. Only 3 more volts, and the ossuary hatch will swallow you. Yet, your gut warns that stories rarely end on almost. A crow flutters from a yew and croaks twice, its silhouette briefly carving a crimson arc against moonlight. Corvinus halts, signals changed, he mutters. Apostles are nearer than hoped. Your next step crunches louder than intended bone shards, not gravel. Graveyard maintenance lapsed in last winter's plague, leaving coffin fragments strewn like broken promises. Instantly, a lantern tongue licks darkness at the lich gate. 2 figures in russet gambesons stride in. Watch sergeants, not zealots but iron hooks, hang from their belts. A capture squad, not casual patrol. Reflex shoves you behind the angel statue, whose face eroded to blank slate. Corvinus blends against the vestry wall, a shadow learning new grammar. Still, the sergeants swing lanterns methodically. Their arc will find both hiding spots within heartbeats. Corvinus signs a swift plan split and drawthen bolts left, cloak flaring. Lanterns pivot, boots thunder after him. You sprint right, hurdling leaning stones. A whistle shrills, bells on watch belts jingle. But whistles invite more nets. Corvinus wants noise elsewhere, so you vanish underground. You skid to the ossuary hatch, pry iron ring, and drop. The lid thumps too loudly. Any hushed exit is forfeited. Better to flee than hide. Your soles slap chalky floor. The air reeks of saltpeter and saint dust. Catacomb tunnels branch like cracked porcelain. Only one leads to the glass, blower's cellar. You count paces, tap wall rib shallow here, solid there matching memory to gloom. Upstairs, faint shouts echo through stone. Then another sound knifes your focus, hinges whining open above. The sergeants? No footsteps too light, too measured. Crimson apostles. Their reputation harrows. Inquisitors who blend scripture with bonesmith torments, believing suffering chants future glimpses. You run, but catacomb floors slant, slick with lime water. A misstep sends you sliding until shin collides femur pile. Bones cascade, clatter like dice, spilled by careless god. Echo betrays position. Lantern glow appears behind, blood-red glass filtering white flame. Two apostles emerge, half-masks lacquered the shade of dried heart. One hefts a steel shepherd's crook ending in barbed crescent, the other carries a slim ledger, quill poisedas if cataloguing pain in real time. Fight or flight? Walls curve too close for sword dance, your daggers crave wider kiss. Instead you fling a bone fragment at Lantern. Glass shatters, oil flares, momentarily blinding red masks. You dart into side niche, kick reliquary lid, crawl through thigh bone clutter. Soot-touched sandstone scrapes knuckles raw, but tunnel beyond slopes upward toward crypt stairs instead of the planned glass shop exit. Choices shrink like drying leather. Stairs spill into the derelict chapter house, moonlight slicing through collapsed roof. Here, wrecked choir stalls form a jagged maze. You weave, heart hammering plainchant. Then a hiss of chain, barbed crook whips round a pillar, snags your calf. Fire lances up bone. You stumble, yanked backwards. Apostle ledger licks quill, poised to inscribe agony. Instinct yanks misericord free, steel flashes, severs the taut chain. Blood fountains from your own flesh, but freedom buys seconds. You vault a clawfoot altar, crash through rotten shutters into open air. Graveyard again, but different quadrant, isolated. Bells now clang city-wide, watch alarm, zealot signal, perhaps both. Your calf throbs. Every step paints grass in dark crescents. Shapes converge at cemetery gate. Corvinus? Notha posture rigid, zealot reverence. Four apostles, one bearing man-portable rack of bronze rods and tightening scrusa traveller's torture table. They expect a cornered soul, not a charging ghost. You sprint, teeth clenched, and hurl Isabeau's last caltrop pouch. Iron stars scatter, unseen in grass. First zealot impales soul, stumbles, chain, bearer collides, rack topples, screws clatter like hail. You vault low wall, vanish into tannery lane. Pain and loss of blood, fray vision, but streets know your cadence. You limp along die gutter. Through curtained doorway, left ajar footpad ally safe house. Nose rings bandits freeze mid-loot packing, her grin fades seeing crimson soak trouser. Swift murmurs trade coin for sanctuary. They cauterize calf with iron poker glowing ruin red, stifle scream with leather strap. In attic gloom you whisper names of roots burned, zealots seen, watch codes heard. Nosering nods, information buys healing. She dispatches runner to Corvinus, alliance geometry shifts, but math of survival demands it. Hours later, dawn's second hue coaxed into sky, Corvinus arrives. His cloak bears crossbow bolt rent, close call. Yet eyes soften at sight of you bandaged. Caught? He asks. You shake head. He exhales what might be pride. Nose ring counts new terms, guild will pay. Outside, watch still scours, apostles prophesy in pain. But inside this rafter-hugging loft, you're breathing. Corvinus presses another obsidian bead into hand for enduring rack's near embrace. 2 beads now, waitling pockets. You realize lesson of night. Capture is no abstract lecture. It is chain bite, ledger quill, blood-laced grass. And you resolved it not by strength alone, but by improvisation, bone, and whispered debts. Sleep finally edges in, thin as candle flame. Before surrender, your fingers find pewter button cool, constant, your quiet rhyme against wreckage, and you let eyelids close, trusting city whispers to keep vigil until next chime of peril. You wake to sun shafts angling through patched roof slats, dust motes dancing like cauterized sparks. Nose rings loft smells of hemp rope, tallow, and the faint scorched meat tang of your freshly seared calf. Pain thrums, but it's honest, unlike the rumours Corvinus lays before you on a scrap of sackcloth. The Red Apostles knew the ossuary route hours before we moved, he says, eyes narrowed. The Watch searched the tannery by name. These aren't guesses, they're echoes from inside our walls. Treachery. The word scuttles across your thoughts like a plague rat, gnawing every memory of shared bread, shared blood. The Guild has protocols for betrayal. Identify, isolate, silence. Corvinus sketches a short list for insiders, with knowledge of last night's map, poison, and escape lattice. Isabeau, Hrodgar, Catelyn, and Brother Aldrich. You flinch. Each name weighs more than the obsidian beads in your pouch. Yet logic slashes sentiment. Aldrich forged the Abbey token, Catelyn the tavern ledger, Hrodgar crated the decoys, and Isabeau supplied the caltrops. Any could have leaked crumbs that became a bread trail to the apostles. We test them, Corvinus says, voice stripped to steel. Tonight. Testing means bait. The footpads provide abandoned woadstore near the dye docks, walls thick, windows slit, thin perfect crucible. You and Corvinus will pose as runners bearing fresh dispatch from a fictitious eastern cell. The 4 suspects will be summoned separately to read it, each offered a unique false detail about the Guild's next hideout. Whichever location the Apostles raid tomorrow will reveal the traitor's tongue. Elegant in theory, lethal in practice, traitor may smell the trap, strike first. Preparations slice the day into tasks. Catelyn inks 4 almost identical letters on rice-thin vellum. You watch for tremor, but her quill glides steady, eyes bright behind kohl, smeared fringe. Hrodgar furnishes iron-barred shutters for woadstore, welding sparks haloing his scarred beard. Isabeau brews night vine antidote, in case the betrayer favours tongueless poisons. Aldrich sends word he'll come after Vesper's confession duties delay him, he claims. Each gesture could be guilt or devotion. Paranoia knots your gut until even pewter button feels unfamiliar against chest. Twilight drapes docks in indigo. Inside the woadstore, lamps burn dim behind blue-stained glass, casting shadows the colour of bruises. Corvinus takes vantage in loft rafters. You limp, patrol ground floor, misericord undersleeve. First to enter, Isabeau, cloak smelling of rue and damp flagstones. She accepts the dispatch, reads by lamp glow, nods approval, slips it into satchel. You note her pupil steady, not darting toward exits. She asks after your wound, presses a second vial of antidote into your palm, leaves with whisper. Trust sparingly, but don't starve on suspicion. Hrodgar arrives next, hammer still tucked in belt. Blue light makes his beard a storm cloud. He scans letter, grunts that eastern cell, favours too much subtlety, then traces finger over blade seam on your misericordia routine, perhaps, or searching for poison sheen. He pats your shoulder with iron-hard hand, lumbers out. From rafters, Corvinus signals nothing no-tell discovered. Your pulse keeps metronome pace, but inner ear hears distant bells of dread tolling closer. Catalin slips in near full dark, humming an off-key tavern tune about millers and geese, the same jingle you sang at the Gilded Fig. She studies dispatch longer than others, lips moving as if memorizing. When done, she folds vellum into lute-shaped origami, tucks it behind ear, winks. Ink outlives iron, she quips, vanishing like stroke of midnight pen. You exchange glances with invisible Corvinus. The wink could be mischief or farewell. Brother Aldrich is late. Candles gutter to stubs, casting warped halos. Finally, door hinges groan. Aldrich steps inside, habit damp with river mist. He apologizes, claims he walked the long way to avoid watch checkpoints. You hand him his unique dispatch. He barely skims it, gaze fixed on your calf bandage, whispering a Latin prayer for healing. Then his sleeve shifts the telltale bulge of hidden vial. You tense. Aldrich notices, raises both palms. Only holy oil, he swears, producing glass phial scented of frankincense. He anoints your brow a gesture of trust or cover for contact poison. He departs before doubt decides. Lock bolts slide. You and Corvinus exhale. Now we wait for wolves at wrong door, he says, descending from rafters. Yet something claws at memory. Aldrich's prayer, he used the phrase Sancte Rufus Protege, invoking a martyr linked to crimson masks, not standard Benedictine liturgy. You voice it, Corvinus's eyes sharpen. Could be coincidence, he murmurs, but doubt has teeth. He orders immediate analysis of the holy oil. Smear on copper tarnishes green arsenic base masked by frankincense. Shock slams breath from lungs. Aldrich, healer, confidant the knife behind robes. Not tomorrow tonight. Trap snaps shut. You and Corvinus race into alley, but night already crackles with approaching boots. Apostles? Watch? Both. Woad store plan collapses into raw survival. Roof, Corvinus hisses. You clamber crates, wound screaming. Below, door bursts, red glass lanterns, flood blue ink gloom. Chain crooks rasp. From rooftop you see Aldrich beneath street torch, half mask tied over tonsure, quill scar ledger in hand. Betrayal wears prayers like wolves wear sheepskins. Corvinus grips your arm. New plan exposed traitor, bleed zealots, keep guild breathing. Shadow melts around you both as you sprint across pitched tiles into a night abruptly narrower, but clear with purpose. Sever the serpent's head before its scripture of blood can write a single further line. Moonlight slicks the rooftops like spilled quicksilver as you and Corvinus race across ridge tiles, every jump a wager with gravity. Shouts swarm the alleys below, lanterns blooming red where Aldrich directs the hunt. Your calf wound screams, reopened by the sprint, blood-spotting shingles in a breadcrumb trail you cannot afford. Yet panic dulls when you sight the single square tower of the Weavers' Guild Haller-friendly perch. Corvinus drops first, rolling hard, then braces you as you stumble down onto a wooden catwalk that quivers under twin weight. We buy breath here, he says, voice ragged. Then we bleed the serpent. Inside the hall, shuttle clatter drowns footfalls. Looms clack in night shift rhythm, tended by bleary journeymen who scarcely glance at two cloaked shapes limping through thread-scented gloom. Corvinus palms a weaver's token, doors unlock to a staircase spiralling into dye cellars. The air below is warm, spiced with madder and alum, comforting as hearthbread after the chill of betrayal. At the deepest vault, you find Isabeau already waiting nose-ring smugglers relayed urgent word. She appraises your torn bandage, tuts, and snaps orders none dare dispute. Drop cloak, lie flat, lamp low, she commands. Steel we can forge, a Genzanu we must salvage. Oil lamp shrinks to ember glow, while Isabeau slips off blood-slick boot, slices linen, exposes ruined calf. Even in gloom you glimpse clotted chain imprints, angry and purple. Apostle barbs are forged in vinegar and salt, she mutters, sniffing wound. They invite rot faster than sermon invites guilt. A thin silver scalpel flashes, you bite leather strap as she fishes rust flecks, irrigates with hot wine and rue. Pain floods vision with stars, but her humlo, steady, almost maternal anchors you. Above, loom thunder muffles any scream. When flesh is clean, she seals it with powdered myrrh and stitches of horse hair so fine you scarcely feel the needle. Finally, she ties a braided wool band, dyed woad dark to hide seepage. Walk slow, but walk, she says, handing you a cane carved from loom heddle, still smelling of flax. Healing, it seems, may borrow tools from any craft. She turns to Corvinus, checking for hidden cuts. None, but his eyes shadow losses etched deeper than skin. I raised Aldrich from novice, he murmurs to her. Too much trust is a garden without fences. Plans sprout over rough trestle. Aldrich must die before dawn hymn, so the apostles lose their mapmaker. But the betrayal route reaches wider, he may have inked guild names in his ledger already. Recovery alone won't shield you. A surgical strike must follow. You unroll district map, finger the abbey cloisters, where Aldrich will lead zealots in false matins. Monks will be roused, confused, perfect smokescreen. Corvinus taps the misericord hilt. One blade, one witness, Isabeau interjects. Poison on the witness, swift and silent too, cuts with one shadow. Yet your leg wobbles. Sprinting, let alone dueling, courts disaster. I'll go, Catiline volunteers from doorway Inc., stained, wide-eyed, having slipped past guards via divats. She carries a choir knife honed on slate. Corvinus hesitates, sees the fire in her pupils. Ink outlives iron, but iron must protect ink, she says, echoing her own mantra. A new plan crystals. You and Isabeau will infiltrate infirmary archives, purge any ledgers Aldrich penned. Corvinus and Catiline will intercept him at Cloister Gate. 2 fronts, 1 midnight toll. Before departure, Isabeau presses blister of greyish paste against your tongue-night vine distillate. Cool numbness threads veins, muting pain to distant thunder. Side effect, colours will sing, she warns. Indeed, torches now leak copper green, and loom dust swirls like gold motes. But clarity sharpens too. Fear dims, purpose flares. You trade silent nods, with Corvinus no ceremonial vows, only professional gravity. Footsteps blend into shuttle cadences until the cellar door swallows you separately toward fates braided tighter than any warp. Isabeau guides through dye tunnels that reek of alum and fermented urine, then up through priest's garden where mint masks odours of clandestine traffic. Abbey windows glow with taper diamonds, organ drone softens night edges. Archivum medicus lies silent behind ironwood door. Isabeau picks lock with silver probe, motion delicate as stitching. Inside, rows of shelves breathe parchment musk. You limp aisle to aisle, scanning twins of the crimson ledger you saw in catacombs. At last bound in calfskin, the shade of dried roses Aldrich's dossier. Its pages glimmer with rust-brown annotations, dates, safehouse codes, names half erased by spilled ink but legible to eyes tutored in gilt cipher. Torchlight blinks beyond latticed window guards approaching. No time to read. You brush pages with tincture Isabeau provides. Ink beads, smears into sludge, words drowning quietly. She then sets wax-sealed casket on table, whispers a prayer. As she cracks it inside, rests a single puffball spore sac. One squeeze releases grey cloud that coats shelves. Spores will devour parchment fibres by dawn, leaving harmless dust. You exit as bells toll matins. In cloister, you glimpse silhouettes. Corvinus grapples Aldrich beneath arch, Catiline blocking zealot with choir knife flashing. A grunt, a wet choke. Aldrich collapses, red staining habit deeper than any stole. Zealot lunges, Catiline pivots, blade slices, throat clean, ink knife, writing full stop in blood. Silence rushes back like tide. Only bell lingers, solemn. Corvinus kneels, closes Aldrich's eyes, whispering a psalm fragmentmacy for memory, if not for flesh. He wipes blade on fallen sleeve, rises. You breathe rue-scented air, colours dim to normal, pain returns but tamed. Betrayal's root severed, ledger eaten by living dust, but trust's carcass remains. In the pre-dawn breeze, candles gutter, sending smoke that smells of bitter myrrh through cloister arches. You press pewter button, cool against pulse, and realise that healing in shadow is never cleanse stitches, leave scars, antidotes leave aftertaste, and loyalty reborn must learn to limp before it runs. Yet dawn spreads pearl streaks across vaulting stone, and for the first time all week, you believe a sunrise might arrive without blood in its mouth. Morning drips like honey through the abbey's shattered silence, slow and sticky after the night's iron staccato. You sit on a low cloister bench, calf bandaged fresh, watching faint wind scatter grey motes where Aldrich's secret ledger once slept. The spores Isabeau released have feasted well parchment, transmutes to drifting dust that catches sunlight, then vanishes. A fitting tomb, no grave, stone, no chant, only the quiet hunger of time, erasing ink and treachery together. Yet, if the pages are gone, their bruises remain on memory's skin, purple and tender. Across the green, Corvinus paces beneath an archway, silhouette dark against pale columns. All night he wore purpose like chainmail. Now fatigue sags his shoulders, an armour of weighted air. Catiline stands near the fountain, scrubbing knife blade in the flow. Each stroke is meticulous, but her eyes stare past water to spaces only doubt can occupy. Isabeau leans against a mulberry trunk, mortar and pestle idle in her lap, pulse visible at her throata drummer, too hesitant to strike. You realise the guild has survived the wound, yet its sinews are stretched thin, quivering with questions, none dare ask aloud. The first arrives on a whisper. How many more Aldrichs lurk unmasked? A week ago, you would have dismissed it as rookery gossip. Now it loops the cloister like a persistent sparrow, pecking crumbs of certainty. Second question flutters behind it. How long before the Red Apostles regroup? Nightvine dulls pain but not foresight. You picture crimson masks pooling again, ledger crumbs still clinging to robes, prophecy bleeding fresh names onto their prayer rods. Third question cuts deepest. When this week ends, who will you be? Corvinus finally halts his pacing, beckons you, Isabeau and Catiline beneath the fig leaf shadows. His voice rasps like parchment crumbling. The apostles will assume we're crippled, he begins. We answer by moving our core north beyond their famine of information. Hrodgar's crates leave at dusk under spice tariff. A sensible strategy, yet something in his cadencino, in his eyes, betrays an undertow. He's looking past plans into fissures no map can mend. The others nod, but you ask, and after north? He exhales through nose, faint whistle. We build again, if our hands still trust the same mortar. Doubt shows in unexpected corners. Catiline, usually brash, avoids your gaze, cheeks splotched like spilled ink. She approaches later, presses a folded scrap into your palm. Inside, a single line in her flourish. If ever quills turn on us, we'll steal, remember who we were. No signature, no request for reply, merely the exhale of her unease. You tuck it beside pewter button, two reliquaries of identity, one cast, one penned, both fragile. Midday brings a tremor you feel before hearing, distant bells clanging out of rhythm. 3-beat pause, then a double toll. Corvinus blanches plague alarm from river quarter. Panic seizes novices, doors slam, incense braziers swing in frantic purification. But you sense deeper ripple. Plague bells can mask troop movements, a cloak for zealots to slip nets. Memories sharpened the apostles, once burned fever victims to purify futures. Rivers of infection run both ways, plague into flesh, zealotry into fear. You propose sending runners to confirm bell authenticity. Corvinus agrees, dispatches 2 trusted lookouts. Waiting becomes its own flogging. Afternoon heat swells, sticky with mulberry sugar and brewing dread. The lookouts return breathless. Bells were false plague warders perplexed, ropes never rung. A ruse, likely zealot spawned, to flush guild survivors into daylight. It failed, but raises the 4th question. Is doubt now the apostles' sharpest weapon? If paranoia roots deeper, collective purpose may splinter without another strike. Corvinus gathers you all in chapter house ruins, speaks plainly. A guild that spends all eyes inward will walk blind to the blade outside. He proposes an oath renewal unorthodox, but needed balm. At dusk, you stand in a sunken transept, fragrant with crushed lavender. One by one, each surviving member steps to a stone basin filled with indigo dye symbol of the Weaver's Quarter sanctuary. Fingers dip, stain, then mark a blue crescent above heart, a vow of new cloth woven from frayed strands. When your turn comes, dye feels cool, grounding. You draw crescent over bandage wrapping calf, mixing blue with faint red seep. Colours swirl into bruise, violet, yet the mark holds. You expect triumphant relief. Instead, a soft ache blooms her mourning for selves, surrendered to necessary night. Ceremony over, torches kindle along ambulatory. The plan north waits, final errands whisper. Corvinus pulls you aside. You've earned choice, he says, quiet. Ride north with us bare mooring and stealer slip away now under moon's impartial eye. No judgment. The offer stuns. Guilds rarely release living secrets. Perhaps your bravery bought leniency. More likely, Corvinus recognizes the tremor you hide. You look toward castle parapets silhouetted purple. Beyond that, roads unfurl like uninked parchment. Freedom hums, sweet yet dissonant. You ask one night to decide. Corvinus nods. In a cell once used for novices' silent vigils, you settle with cane, misericord, and lootless memories. Candle flickers, casting question-shaped shadows. You lay obsidian beads, pewter button, Catalin's note on straw, measuring their weight. Doubt is no longer enemy. It is compass, trembling but truthful. Whatever choice dawn draws from you, it will be inked in scar tissue and midnight echoes. For now, you close eyes, listening to muted loom thumps, far-off threads, weaving, unweaving, weaving again until sleep arrives, patient and uncertain, like the future that waits one corridor beyond. Night leans its weight against the abbey walls, pressing quiet into every mortar joint. You sit cross-legged on the cold tile, 3 small tokens gleaming in candle glow before you, 2 obsidian beads, each blacker than midnight ink, and 1 humble pewter button, its edges worn smooth by worried thumbs. They are the breadcrumb trail of your week in shadow, blade, poison, doubt, and the stubborn kernel of self you refused to misplace. Outside, an owl calls from the cloister yew. Its question note seems meant for you alone. Stay or vanish. Sleep comes in broken rivulets, pooling around memories that jolt you awake. The luthier's final sigh, Aldrich's chain hook ripping flesh, Catalin's ink knife spelling mercy in scarlet. Every scene feels at once distant and stitched to your skin. Dawn cannot decide whether to arrive. A chalky glow smudges the arrow, slits, but no bird dares announce the sun. When Corvinus's knock finally breaks the hush, you're already standing, decision coiled tight in your lungs. The refectory is bare, save for a single travel pack on the trestle. Corvinus waits beside it, cloak clasp undone, as though poised between unrolling and shedding. North gate opens at tierce, he says. Last wagon leaves with Hrodgar's crates then. His gaze lingers on your bandaged leg, then lifts to meet your own. You feel neither judgment nor plea, only the steady regard of a man who has carved too many names into the ledger of necessity. You place the 2 obsidian beads upon the pack flap. These belong with the guild, you say, voice steadier than heartbeat. Proof a shadow paid its debts. The beads look suddenly small, fragile even, dwarfed by coarse canvas and the roads yawning miles. Corvinus inclines his head, but when his hand moves to retrieve them, he pauses, palm hovering. And the button, he asks. You close fist around the cool pewter. That one comes with me. He accepts the verdict the way seasoned warriors accept rainfall, inevitable, impartial. Footpad allies can smuggle you past the East Watch, he offers. After that, the road belongs to itself. You nod, but surprise both of you by reaching for his forearm in the grip warriors trade before battle. For the briefest breath your scars and his align, a tapestry of choices hardened into skin. Guard your garden, you whisper, referencing his earlier metaphor of trust and fences. He rasps a half laugh, half sigh, as though exhaling a weight too old to name. Departure is a lesson in unmaking footsteps. You carry no gilt steel, only the cane carved from loom heddle, Catalin's folded note, and a tiny pouch of Isabeau's nightmine powder in case the leg flares on the road. Moon still lingers, a tarnished coin, when the footpads usher you through a breach in the eastern palisade. Nose ring wishes you fat purses and thin pursuers, then disappears in drizzle like a tale half told. You glance back once. Cathedral spire, silhouetted, resembles a quill poised above parchment sky. Then the lane bends, and the city predator, Muse Crucible, is gone. Days tumble westward, each dawn a little brighter for lack of watch bells and dagger whispers. Forest paths breathe resin and damp earth instead of tannery lime. Rivers sing wider, truer songs than the harbour's barges ever could. Yet the guild has taught you to read patterns in every ripple. Hoof tracks too deep for deer, laundry lines that vanish overnight in a hamlet that swore no plague. You travel as the minstrel again, this time with a borrowed lyre whose gut strings carry no poison, only the ache of unfinished melodies. In taverns, you trade songs for supper, choosing ballads of wandering healers and repentant thieves rather than sly assassin rhymes. Listeners smile, unaware of the narrow ledge you walk between memory and reinvention. One evening, in a border village where mist grazes thatch like low cloud, a child asks about the crescent-shaped scar on your calf. You kneel, trace it softly, and tell a half-truth. It reminds me to step carefully in dark places. The child nods, accepting mystery as children do, then presses a marigold into your hand. Compensation for the story. Orange petals glow against pewter button, and for the first time since that rooftop oath, you feel something flutter close to peace. Months roll. Seasons exchange banners of blossom, dust, snow. Rumours drift red apostles, scattering after disastrous skirmish near the northern passes. A black-cloaked guild, rumoured reborn in wind-swept ports farther still. You neither chase nor flee such whispers. Instead, you map constellations over new horizons, letting starlight etch navigation lines across the scabs of memory. When winter finally settles, you take lodging in a hilltop abbey where monks copy herbals. Your hand, once trained for miniature cipher, now sketches botanical margins under lamplight. The misericord's former niche on your belt holds quills. The cane supports more than flesh, reminding you that mending is also a craft. On the coldest solstice night, you walk the cloister garden alone, snow crunching like distant applause. From inside cloak, you draw the pewter button, thumb its weathered face until warmth blooms through metal. Overhead, the sky is so clean of smoke, you can see the faint smear of the Milky Way, a silent testament that even in eras of steel and poison, there are corridors beyond reach of any blade. You breathe mist clouds, and for the first time realize you're not listening for footfalls behind you. You close your eyes, not in exhaustion but choice, and let the hush settle. Somewhere, perhaps, Corvinus presses fresh crescents to his heart beneath far-off torchlight. Perhaps Catalin inks new stories. Perhaps Isabeau murmurs over rue. But here, under watchful stars, you finish the week that stretched to months, and write a final silent line in the ledger of self. You endured, you learned, and you are free to sleep.